Hi, romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to the 2022 Season 7 premiere of Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. I chatted with award-winning historical romance author Melissa Oliver about her medieval romance, The Knights' Convenient Alliance. Melissa also discussed love potions, castles, and her New Year's goals. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, Melissa.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I join you today from the setting of your medieval historical romance, The Knights' Convenient Alliance, Book 4 in Notorious Knights series. Greetings from Kinnerton Castle on the borders of Wales in the year 1224. I noticed that you have come also attired in medieval garb. I'd love to learn more about what you've put together.
I put together a cloak fashioned in wool, which is, they wouldn't have had too many different sort of fabrics in those days. If they were quite wealthy, they would have definitely had velvet as well. And everything would have been naturally dyed. And then they would have definitely sort of had all of the edges of their garments decorated in different things. So I've got here, it's just a trimming really, and the corners of it are. These look quite medieval because they've, got lots of lovely workings on them and stone. And then they probably would have had a veil as well. The women would have worn veils, and sheer ones, even sheer ones like this would have been worn. And then I've got a circle. Well, this is supposed to be a circlet, which would have been a very small, thin band made out of silver or gold to kind of go with the rest of the jewelry that they would have been wearing.
You mentioned velvet was for upper class, so I guess that means I am royalty?
You're nobility, definitely.
Okay. Now, I don't have any headdress, would I be considered a loose woman?
Sadly, yes. So the Knights' Convenient Alliance pretty much starts off from where Book 3 of the Notorious Knights left off. Having said that, you don't have to read Book 3, it is a standalone book. But the two characters in this book, the Knights Convenient Alliance, you meet them in Book 3, and they're Thomas Levant and Bridger O'Connell. And they basically have a moment in after their friend's wedding. And it's quite an intimate moment, which is very sweet, but then things go awry. And they kind of have to separate, don't see one another again for 3 years. And they're reunited in 1224 when Matt is in London, because Thomas by this point is working for the crown secretly. So it forces him out of London and back to Kinnerton to seek assistance from his friend. They're not there. So the next person he turns to is Bridger. And that's when really the adventure starts for Bridger and Thomas to get to know each other again, but also reconnect. And the romance and all the troubles start from there, really.
So where were you and what were you doing when the love story between Bridger and Sir Thomas first took root in your mind?
I was thinking about these two characters, about how they could come together, because when you meet them in the third book and even at the beginning of their own story in the prologue, there is definitely there's something snarky between them at the beginning. They're not, especially from her point of view, from Bridger, because she just thinks that he's just a pretty face, he just really loves himself, and she's not interested at all. He just thinks too highly of himself. So her thing with him is always about putting him down. But in terms of their love story, it was really an organic way of thinking about how these two people, how their story could evolve over time. And it was, the more they got to know one another, they realized they had an awful lot more in common than they realized. So yeah, and where I was, I guess, was in my, writing room, basically in the front room, and my desk, sort of thrashing out loads of ideas about where or when they should sort of get together, basically.
Why the Middle Ages? What about the Middle Ages to you screams romance, and I've got some stories to tell?
Well, this particular moment in English history is fascinating because it's rife with so much drama and tension and intrigue and suspense, really, within the court itself. And I just think to sort of drop almost, if you like, or have this romance within that time, it's quite challenging for these two people to come together as it is. So it creates a lot of it creates a lot of conflict already before you even start, before you even go into these two people's personal stories and their own inner conflicts. You have this external conflict already ready made. The country was almost at civil war in England, so you had every bit of some people on either the king's side, if you like, on the royalist side, and then you had the rest of the people on the baron's side. And so many people were really dissatisfied with that reign as well. So that just the whole era, it's quite ready for, it's quite a good sort of era to have this romance there already, because it lends itself to so much drama and external conflict that it's quite fascinating to sort of come up with lots and lots of different ideas around that.
So, what was your favorite scene to write?
I loved all the interactions that Tom and Brida have. They really were a fun couple to write because of the banter they constantly had. They really had a good spark there. But one that really stands to mind that I really enjoyed writing was the bit where they're traveling towards the border of Wales, into Wales, sorry, and they group up with some minstrels there and join that group. I really loved writing that. There's lots of different elements to that scene which I had to make work, because first you had the fun element of them joining this absolutely crazy group of people who are really raucous and bawdy and just noisy. And then also you had these very sort of intimate moments with them, because without saying too much, Thomas sort of, they come to know one another a little bit more through certain aspects here, and he challenges Brida to sort of channel these things that were part of her once in this scene, and as a result they really do come together a lot closer as well. So it was so to have that poignancy there in those scenes, and then to balance it with all these fun moments was quite challenging, but I really, really enjoyed it, actually.
I could completely see that scene play out so vividly as I was reading it. And I was like, oh, I could see this in a movie. Like, I love when historical romance authors such as yourself write a scene so rich and detailed and vibrant that you're like, oh my God, it's like I'm watching a movie. You almost forget, like, am I reading a book or watching a movie right now? Because it's so vivid in my mind. So that was one of those scenes for sure.
Oh, that's really kind of you to say so. If I've done that, then my job is done, really, because that's what that scene especially was meant to be very vivid and very colorful, definitely.
Oh, for sure. It was such a delight to read. Superstition plays a role in Britta's story. How much did superstition rule the romantic lives of people during the Middle Ages?
Of course, at that time, Christianity ruled absolutely every single facet of people's lives. But also so did many things that couldn't be explained. And this is where superstition really does come in. So I think there's a little bit which is hand in hand. So things that weren't explained away could be definitely sort of thought of as a curse or through superstition, and they were definitely believed. I mean, you wouldn't have been thought of being mad if you had believed really in certain superstitions at that time. So they were rife, definitely. Lots of people would have done special things to ward off illnesses, for instance, or they would have had, not only would they have obviously made prayer, etc. But they would have also had lots of different superstitions and things that they would have done if their loved ones were ill, or if their loved ones were there on their deathbed, or even things like to fall in love as well. Love potions and all that kind of stuff would have definitely come into it. So yeah, it was a superstitious era, definitely.
The love potion stuff, did you read something with ingredients? Like, was there what do you know about that?
I can't remember off the top of my head all the different ingredients. Would have all been herbal based. So there are, so many examples of people saying they were cursed because they fell in love with so-and-so. And if they were caught in the bed, if a spouse was caught in bed with somebody he shouldn't have been, or she shouldn't have been, they would have explained it away definitely by saying they were cursed, or or they were given some sort of love potion, and sometimes they were believed, of course, at that time.
Did you spend time at any castles soaking up the 13th century vibes so that way you could write from the perspective of Sir Thomas and Britta?
I have in my time gone to many castles. I'm very lucky living in southwest London, because I'm there's so many wonderful places nearby that I can visit. For 13th century, the castles that I've been to that are absolutely lovely. There's one called Leeds Castle, which strangely enough isn't in Leeds, it's in the south of England. I don't know why it's called the Leeds Castle. There's one nearby me called Guildford Castle as well. There's only parts of it that still remain. I've also been to Warwick Castle. Parts of it are still there that are certainly medieval, but they do loads of lovely jousting and stuff, things like that. Hever Castle is another one of my absolute favourites. Hever Castle is the family home of Anne Boleyn. So that's where she grew up. It's got the most fascinating history, because eventually Henry VIII, once got rid of her, gave that particular castle to one of his wives who he didn't have executed, or he gave it to Anne of Cleves, and who he divorced. And then, of course, I've got the Tower of London as well. Many parts of the Tower of London are from the 13th century, or earlier actually as well. So absolutely. And then, of course, there's a scene in this particular book that's at Westminster Abbey. So obviously, yeah, I've been there as well. So not everything from Westminster Abbey would have been as it is today, right, but certainly parts of it are.
Someday I want to get to England and go see castles. I think if I walked into a castle, I would cry, because for so long I've wanted to go to an actual castle. Did you do a tour specifically, like, I'm gearing up to dig into this book, so I'm going to do a little tour and a refresher course on castles and just medieval living?
Yeah, say for instance, Dover Castle and also the Tower of London, they have rooms that are still sort of decorated as it would have been back then. So they've got the wainscoting, they've got the textiles, on the bed, they've got all of the different furniture. Even if it's replicas, they're still furniture from that time. Dover Castle in particular is absolutely brilliant for that. With the Tower of London, they've got a couple of rooms other than that, it's more or less a museum. But it is really lovely to go to those sort of spaces. You can really envisage all the different things that would have happened. So yeah, they're really useful for someone like me, because you can see how they would have been decorated at the time. Because don't forget, at that time, they would have, especially if they were from the nobility, they would have moved around in an entourage, and they would have taken their textiles with them, and they would have hung them, and that would have given those spaces, which are very cavernous, they're very large, they would have given them lots of nice warmth into the room. So all of those kind of things added, sort of gave me a little bit more of a rich richness that I could add to the books myself.
Name a book that you've added to your 2022 to-read list.
The next book of Lucy Morris's. I can't remember what her book's title is, but that's the one I'm gonna say.
Which writing project will you be working on in the new year?
So that is the new series that I'm working on now called The Protectors of the Crown. It's a new series that I was mentioning earlier. It's set in London, medieval London, and it's again a few years after the Knights Convenient Alliance ends. So I'm working on book 2 actually. Book 1's done. So that's already done. Yeah.
I'm
really excited about them. They're basically 3 knights who are agents of the crown, and it's all about all their different love stories, basically.
I fully expect there's going to be adventure, suspense, and all of that stuff. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Is there a writing habit that you hope to change in 2022?
I would love to be able to be very good about not writing too late into the evening. I want my evenings free. It hasn't happened yet. So because I have to hit those targets. And if I don't hit those targets, I just go late into the night and it kills me the following day. And so I get into a terrible pattern that just can't break. So if I could break that pattern, that would be really good.
Who do you want to get to know better in the new year?
Since publication, most of my time has been we've had lockdown and as everywhere, it's not just been in the UK. So I'd really like to know a lot more of the Harlequin novelists, actually, because most of us have had Zoom meetings, or we've had, we've met basically online. We haven't actually met face to face. So it would be really lovely to meet people in person, actually. So yeah, I'd like to meet more of the Harlequin historical novelists. That would be really nice.
Jen, what has to happen this year for you to proclaim it the best year ever?
Professionally, I would love to carry on writing new books and just carry on with this writer's journey that I've been on, which I've been so happy with. It's been so amazing. So to carry on with that would be really brilliant. Yeah, and write more books that people want to read. That's the aim really for us writers. We want people to love our books at the end of the day. So if that happens, then yeah, I'll be really happy.
Well, thank you again, Melissa, for joining me here on Reader Seeks Romance. It was wonderful getting to know you better.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to be here as well.